Hey guys, welcome back to Follow Me 11B. Discussions on current events, macroeconomics, and freedom and liberty from a veteran's perspective. Today I wanted to, on this St. Patrick's Day, discuss inflation. And to kick things off, I'm going to go straight to a CNBC News article I came across from March 10th, 2022, entitled Inflation Rose 7.9% in February as food and energy costs push prices to highest in more than 40 years, by Jeff Cox. The Consumer Price Index for February rose 7.9% from a year ago, the highest level since January 1982. Gas, groceries, and shelter were the biggest contributors to the CPI gain. Worker paychecks fell further behind as inflation-adjusted earnings dropped 0.8% in February, contributing to a 2.6% decline over the past year. Inflation grew worse in February amid the escalating crisis in Ukraine and price pressures that became more entrenched. The Consumer Price Index, which measures a wide-ranging basket of goods and services, increased 7.9% over the past 12 months. A fresh 40-year high for the closely followed gauge, according to the Labor Department's Bureau of Labor Statistics. The February acceleration was the fastest pace since January 1982, back when the U.S. economy confronted the twin threat of higher inflation and reduced economic growth. On a month-over-month basis, the CPI gain was 0.8%. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones had expected headline inflation to increase 7.8% for the year and 0.7% for the month. Food prices rose 1% and food at home jumped 1.4%. Energy also was at the forefront of ballooning prices, up 3.5% for February and accounting for about one-third of the headline gain. I like this next line. Excluding volatile food and energy prices, so-called core inflation rose 6.4%, in line with estimates, and the highest since August 1982. So, the reason I like that was, core inflation rose 6.4%, totally in line with our estimates. Nothing to see here, people. We got everything under control. A-okay. Everything is A-okay. Don't worry about it. And also, that's just if you exclude, like everything human beings need to live, like food and energy, like food, gasoline for your car, even electricity for your car, heating for your house, natural gas, or cooling for your house. So if you take out all the stuff that a normal human being needs to live, then we're totally in line, even though it's the worst since 1982. Moving on, the rise in inflation meant worker paychecks fell further behind despite what otherwise would be considered strong increases. Real inflation-adjusted average hourly earnings for the month fell 0.8% in February, contributing to a 2.6% decline over the past year, according to the BLS. Markets indicated a negative open on Wall Street, with stocks pressured by faltering Russia-Ukraine ceasefire talks. Quote, inflation is coming in hot, but the reality is there are no real surprises in this report, said Mike Loengart, managing director of investment strategy for E-Trade. The market likely already priced the inflation increase in accordingly and is instead intently focused on Ukraine and the downstream impact from commodities, which are already sending shockwaves through the market. Yep, I can see that. The inflation surge is in keeping with price gains over the past year. Inflation has roared higher amid an unprecedented government spending blitz, coupled with persistent supply chain disruptions that have been unable to keep up with stimulus-fueled demand, particularly for goods over services. Policymakers have been expecting inflation to abate as supply chain issues ease. You're going to have to keep waiting, I'm afraid to say, in my opinion, because, as you may or may not have heard, in the midst of our global economy, China is once again in the throes of a illness outbreak. So obviously they take that pretty seriously, and they have some pretty severe lockdowns there, and that will certainly slow the supply chain even further. A raging crisis in Europe has only fed into price pressures as sanctions against Russia have coincided with surging gasoline costs. Prices at the pump are up about 24% over just the past month and 53% in the past year, according to AAA. On another note, if you're interested in a veteran's perspective and a local level of gasoline price changes, since April 2021 on my Facebook page at Follow Me 11B, I have been have a basket of items of my own and commodities that I have been keeping track of, including lumber, food, and gas, food, lumber, etc., medicine, some other things. And I've got one I just did an update on last week. So it's interesting to see how the gasoline jumps year to date this year I keep track of, as well as since I started in April 2021, compared to the AAA numbers. I'll also be doing one again towards the end of the month for some other commodities and products. Moreover, businesses are raising costs to keep up with the price of raw goods and increasing pay in a historically tight labor market in which there are about 4.8 million more job openings than there are available workers. So that's another driver of this inflation. If you can just imagine, I mean, everything, like I said, is going up, but if you have to pay your workers more to keep them on board, the ones you have left, if you have to you have a starting wage that's more than you used to start people at, those are extra costs that a business just can't absorb. Most businesses have to pass that along to the consumer in the form of higher prices, and that's just adding more pressure to the price hikes. To try to stem the trend, the Federal Reserve is expected next week to announce the first of a series of interest rate hikes aimed at slowing inflation. It will be the first time the central bank has raised rates in more than 3 years, and marks a reversal of a zero interest rate policy and unprecedented levels of cash injections for an economy that in 2021 grew at its fastest pace in 37 years. So, that said, this is an article from the 10th. Now it's a week later. And yes, indeed, they did announce their first rate hike, and approximately, I think they said at least 7 more to follow throughout the year. But what was the rate hike? It was 25 basis points, which is a quarter of 1%. And CPI inflation rate, as of February 22, came out the beginning of this month, the numbers, was 7.9%. So we got a 7.9% inflation rate, likely much higher, but just according to the government's own cooked books, if you will, and skewed numbers, 7.9%. Now, if we're attacking the 7.9% with a quarter of a percentage point rate hike, that's like taking a squirt gun to put out a 5-alarm fire. We need a hose, any big hose, not a squirt gun. But let's move on here. However, inflation is not a U.S.-centric story. Global prices are subject to many of the same factors hitting the domestic economy, and central banks are responding in kind. On Thursday, the European Central Bank said it was not moving its benchmark interest rate, but would end its own asset purchase program sooner than planned. So it sounds like their version of the taper. So, that said, it is St. Paddy's Day. St. Patrick, 4th century AD, spread religion throughout Ireland, had some legends around him that he got rid of all the snakes in Ireland, so on and so forth. But big holiday sprung up around St. Patrick, originally a religious holiday. Since the Irish eventually moved to, many of them moved to North America. North America has enjoyed St. Patrick's Day, but as more of a cultural holiday, which is what you see when you watch the St. Patrick's Day parade and so on and so forth. Matter of fact, even I don't know what they call it. I forgot what they called it, but Canada even started I think it's an Irish appreciation, Irish culture appreciation month, something along those lines, and it started this month, March 2022, for the first time. So hey, even the Canadians are getting in on the St. Patrick's Day fun. So all right, that's some good news. But what I wanted to leave y'all with was a piece of good news in an environment of a lot of bad inflation news. Here's one piece of good news. 5.87. What is that? $5.87 billion will be spent today by Americans on St. Patrick's Day related items, food, alcohol, beer. So I just wanted to leave you all with a good note for, in light of all this bad inflation news. So we do have some good macro news, even if it's only for a day. So I hope you will subscribe to the channel and post any comments, anything I may have missed about St. Patrick's Day, or maybe some St. Patrick's Day stories that you have. Post them in the comments, please. And don't forget to visit us at Follow Me 11B on Facebook and Twitter, and at The Real Follow Me 11B on Instagram. And 5.87 billion. Happy St. Patty's Day.